Let's take a ride, find your wild side, real stories, see with your own eyes.
It's so beautiful.
I'm gonna have the best time out here.
Yeah, I was in tears. I was like, that's the best, man.
All right, welcome back, guys. Episode 11 of Who the Wild Things Are. Today we have an amazing guest, Mike Basich. He's a professional snowboarder that is also renowned for his tiny home builds and off-grid living style. So we're going to try and get him on here and get this party started. There he is. How's it going, Mike?
Hey. How's it going? Good morning.
Good. We got it all figured out.
Yeah. I'm on a shoestring here, but looks like I'm here.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. This is really cool for me because I've been following your story for a long time. You've been a big inspiration to me in kind of both worlds of snowboarding as well as like digital media and tiny house builds. So it's really cool. Thanks for being on.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me and setting this up.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I think what interests me, in the beginning when I heard about your story so much was how multivariate you are. You kind of have chosen a couple different things to excel at, not just snowboarding, not just tiny house builds. You kind of made a conglomerate and really excelled in multiple different areas. So yeah, I've loved watching your story, man.
Yeah. Cool. But thanks. It's been kind of not really a plan as things have happened, but they just kind of fell in my lap, and a lot of things I didn't know how to do, so I just kind of figured out how to take photographs, whatever it was, to continue with snowboarding. And building's been my lifelong passion, so I kind of brought that part into my life as far as the snowboarding career goes. Not until 10, 15 years ago, to just kind of share more who I am. So that was kind of how that naturally kind of came about.
Right on. Yeah. So I'm curious. Let's take you back maybe to the beginning of the snowboard days. I think maybe what a lot of people don't understand is that snowboarding is an incredibly young sport, and you were kind of there at the forefront when this thing was all getting kicked off. What was it like, kind of growing up as a pioneer for a sport that really had no rules?
It was exciting for one. It's a little bit of a struggle to figure out where to put yourself in a sport that's brand new. Besides just being free and wild and do whatever you want, but that only lasts so long as far as a career. I think that's why you saw some people come and go in the sport pretty rapidly in the late 80s and the 90s. People had fun, and then when it wasn't fun anymore, it was over. And because the sport changed a lot in the 90s, when the amount of money that was involved made certain other people come in the game and start training. So it's kind of started off as a bunch of kids that were outcasts that fit into snowboarding, because that's what snowboarding was just this odd, weird sport that wasn't welcome. And that was kind of the adventure of trying to make us all figure out where we're going to go. It's pretty fun being in an industry where everyone's kind of an oddball. So everyone had a lot of ideas, a lot of unique people, a lot of artists. And I think that's why I stuck with snowboarding, because it was a lot of fun people that thought outside the box a lot.
Absolutely. I can only imagine like the different snowboard designs that came out during that time, because there's a lot of different stuff people try nowadays, but I'm sure in the beginning of the sport that it was like people were trying everything to
a lot of people had great ideas and inventions and videos. All the people that had the ideas weren't exactly the people with the money to make things happen. So that was a funny bridge to meet whoever was the investor or the TV channel, like whatever it was you're trying to make your work, the person needed to make it happen completely. You kind of had to sell yourself in a certain way. And that's been a really unique thing that I learned that has helped me continue, is how to communicate with different types of people that aren't really into your idea exactly, but you just get enough of their interest or trust that, I don't know, they can invest in what you're doing, and then somehow down the line it gets figured out, because yourself, you don't have a really, at least me, I don't have a complete plan or guarantee what's going to happen. That's kind of, it's always been that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to say the plan is no plan. That's kind of, that's one of my mottos, just kind of figure it out as you go.
Yeah. And it's just fun that way. It's a lot of fun. As long as nobody gets too hurt, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy.
And when you're building, unique structures like you do, a lot of times it's kind of impossible to plan out. You're not sure what resources you're going to have or what hiccups you're going to hit along the way.
Yeah, totally true. A lot of it comes down to also what kind of material you're working with. I'm always try to work with nature in the most natural form. So yeah, the weather, the size of rocks, whatever it is I'm building with, kind of shapes that stuff. And I'm not building skyscrapers, so you have a lot of wiggle room to be more creative when you're not trying to make something that's needs super high engineering. That's kind of the beauty of the tiny home world too. There's no rules, and that's a lot of people I think forget that's what the tiny home or even off grid building is a lot about. Is just being creative, and you don't have to really ask of your approval. The simple rules of the law are already laid out. For just you're allowed to tow whatever you want on a trailer, so it doesn't really matter what it looks or how it's built, as long as you're happy with it.
So what made you kind of leave the more conventional athlete life where it was, competitions and more about money? What was the turning point there when you said, kind of screw all that stuff, I'm going to go in a different direction?
I remember the day. It was at the X Games in Crescent Butte. It might have been competing for so long that I realized snowboarding was taking a bigger shift than it ever has, and a lot of it was down to we weren't the priority of the event. So that made me realize the focus for what we're there for isn't so much about snowboarding. What I mean by that is, like, when you're at the top of the run and you're ready to drop in and you're about to risk your life, and then someone says, "Oh, please move to the side. I need to have this VIP person stand here. We're going to do a quick shot of him before you drop in." And so that kind of stuff, right? Oh, this is a TV focused program, and they're not giving us enough room to, or at least for me, enough room to like feel comfortable doing whatever it is I was about to do off the jump. And so I realized that part of the sport kind of shifted a little bit more into where the money is and not so much the talent. And so that made me like, yeah, I've done what I wanted in the sport for competition, and there seems like there's a lot of more room to do something else. I had to reinvent myself after that in some ways to keep sponsors and all that kind of stuff. So that was a whole adventure just about to start when that happened. And this is about 99.
Yeah, it's a totally different world when you look back at those tapes compared to the show they put on now. So I can definitely relate to what you're saying. Like, it's a whole big event now with tons of sponsorships, and a lot of the focus has definitely shifted off the athletes and onto the show that surrounds it. So I can see how, especially being a kid, right? How old were you at this time?
99, I was probably 26, 27.
Yeah. And when did you start competing?
I started competing as a junior in 87.
Wow.
So I went pro in 91 or 1990, somewhere around there. That kind of just happened. I qualified for the World Cup, and so like, oh, I guess I'm going pro. So, and I went to Japan. And that was kind of my first introduction to the professional side, or the non-professional side of snowboarding.
Right. That's pretty cool that you got to travel all over the world, despite the things that did turn you off about the sport, you definitely got some really cool experiences, you know, traveling around and living that lifestyle.
Yeah, I was actually really lucky for that. My parents especially let me miss half of my last 2 years of high school because of snowboarding. As long as I brought back some sort of like write up about, I don't know, going to Europe and learn about the art that I was learning about in school anyway, in books. And I learned about how to manage myself with contracts. I started a business in 91 right after high school for clothing. So I kind of just more learned all the things I think I was going to learn anyway in school. So that was, just a part of an experience that I got to put to action and learn it the hard way. I lost lots of money because I didn't know the right words or what to say at the right time. And that's part of it. You know, you're passionate about something. You get emotional if someone says, "Oh, you suck. We can't sponsor you anymore. You know, you're too old." You're like, "What?" That's so. There's been different moments that you're like, "Okay, I get it." And you have to kind of put your representative of you forward sometimes, and kind of keep the passionate part till your second conversation. You know.
Yeah, for sure. And then you kind of had your turning point and it shift from, you know, that competition style snowboarding to more of like what I would call like adventure snowboarding, right? Like chasing big storms and POW days and, you know, that more artistic, in my opinion, more artistic kind of pure form of snowboarding. And I feel like that's kind of really been where you made your name, like chasing these big storms and coming back with these crazy photographs that people are like, how is this possible? Like the helicopter one, that one still doesn't even make sense to me.
Yeah, it seems like that was a big part of my career. The photographs, the self portraits. After quitting competing, I kind of like back to like I wanted to reinvent myself, or had to in some ways if I wanted to stay in the sport as an athlete. And because in 99, 2000, someone that's 26, 27 years old was way too old to invest in for as far as the company's point of view. So I realized, you know, there's no space in the sport for any of us at older ages. So I realized photography, I didn't know a lot about it. I did like taking photographs, but I didn't know how cameras work so much. So I learned a lot by listening to photographs because I was photographed a lot for snowboarding. So my interest was to capture what I saw in snowboarding. I wanted to share that point of view. So riding with the camera kind of started off as just holding it, and I started to learn how to weld. So I figured out how to make these unique tripods, and I wanted to bring more of my passion into the sport than the competition was. So I think that category let me breathe a lot more, and I had nothing to lose because I didn't have any sponsors really. So I was at a point in my career where I made money snowboarding. I owned a house at the time. Like, okay, I can make way less money. I can sell my house. I can live out of my car, and I can make way more snowboarding runs in the powder. And that it totally made sense. So I sold my house. I bought a van. I built it into a camper, 4-wheel drive van. And that was kind of the best way I could be mobile to chase the snow. Because, I mean, you own a house, you want to go chase a storm that snowed 3 feet yesterday, halfway around the world, and you're too late. You know, it's like you have to be ready. Like, okay, I need to be in Alaska or somewhere. You want to be there when it's chasing storms. And that kind of made my photography, I think, blossom in the way it did. That I was in the spot at the right time most of the time, and had no responsibilities. It was awesome. I think that's the best recipe you can ask for snowboarding.
That's amazing. Yeah, I can definitely relate to the being too late to the storms, right? Especially somewhere like Tahoe, where there's only a couple, you know, roads, or Alaska, that if you try to come after the storm, you're not going to get there. There's no hope.
Yeah, so I did a lot of night driving. Like I would ride somewhere in Tahoe, and then I'm like, oh, the storm's going to Jackson, and I'm like, okay. At day of riding, I'm like, hit the road, get there for the tram. Next day riding, and it was tiring. It was a lot of work, especially the photography part of it, because everything I shot, most of the time I had to hike it twice to set up the camera and then go back and actually do the run. So I put a lot of time in to my photography, more than I probably ever did for competition. And that made, I think that helped something in the photos that people see. There's just something really thought through really well. A lot of my photos are all kind of prep for them sometimes, like the rainbow rail. Like I built a rainbow rail, and I hold it around for 5 months waiting for the right spot. I actually went up to Alaska. That was my last stop for the winter. Like, well, I guess I'm bringing this rail, this 60 feet of metal, all the way up to Alaska, because it's like springtime everywhere else, and I didn't know where else to go. So there's certain things that I just didn't want to let go and put a lot of time in until something happened.
How did you get that rail up to Alaska? Did you pull a trailer behind your rig?
That year I actually had a RV that it wasn't mine, but we were taking it to Alaska. So we had the sleds on the trailer, and I put the rail on top of the RV.
Just driving down the highway with a massive rail on top of the RV?
Yeah, it was, a lot of people thought we were a movie set, because it came apart. It was 3 pieces, and it had these legs on it that stuck in the snow that are buried in the photo. But yeah.
So you built that?
Yeah, I built 2 of them. Actually, I built one the year before, and I did it for a Hollywood film. No, that wasn't the idea when I built it, but they were like, "Do you have anything you want to shoot for this film coming out?" And I was like, "Oh, perfect. I'll do the rail." And we shot it in Park City, actually. And they were like, "Well, okay, we're going to hold on the footage until the movie sells." And I didn't realize that. It's like, it could take years for the film to sell. And so they didn't have the rights to the shots. And so it never came out, actually. They never sold the film. So I was like, well, the next summer I built another one. And that's the one you see in the stuff I have.
But for those people listening who might not be familiar, a rainbow rail basically starts low and goes up, and it's got an apex, and then comes back down on the other side like a rainbow. So there's a legendary picture of you on the top of that rainbow rail. I think you're kind of doing like a front side board slide. It's pretty epic shot.
Yeah, I like rainbow rails over staircase or King's rails. So it made more sense for how fast I had to go to get actually that up on the apex of that thing.
How high was the middle of the rainbow? Like, just for people at home, like thinking about how high you are off the ground.
I think it was about 14 feet.
Wow.
Like 14, maybe. Yeah, maybe a little more. I never measured it because you couldn't reach it, but it was on a gravel, this tabletop spot of gravel. So I looked at it's hard to find the right spot to do a lot of stuff like this, because you need a certain amount of speed, you need a certain amount of transition, and as the photography eye, you always have that eye, like, I need something different in the background that the first place to check out. So you need a lot of things to come together, and this worked. I didn't have the run-in, so I actually got towed in by a snowmobile, and that kind of you just figured it out as you go. But there's certain things that I had in mind, like I thought it'd be way up on a mountain peak, and I ended up setting this rainbow rail up on the side of the road, kind of somewhere on a riverbed. In the shot, like, depending on what angle you look at it, there's actually gravel that I actually, half the time when I didn't make the rail, I'd fall into gravel, actually. So
14 feet into gravel is not a fun fall.
No, not at all.
Okay, so you got the building experience, partially from your van travels and stuff like that. But then the area 241, right, is where I feel like you really took your dream to the next level. That place is amazing, and it was one of my inspirations when I started, building different shelters in the woods. Was looking at how you solve different problems in a really small amount of space. Was that project something that you thought about for many years beforehand?
The off-grid part of it was something I always wanted to do as a kid. And so I thought I would actually do this in my 20s. But with snowboarding, I kind of just adventured in a different way as far as a homestead. And so this was in, I think, my 33rd year. I was 33 or 32 when I bought this property. I realized, like, I want to bring in my lifestyle, what I want to live. Like, a lot of times I just go out and travel for snowboarding. And, you go visit these rad lodges out in the mountains. And they're places that are fun to visit for me. But I was like, I want to have something more of my own space that I can work towards as a kind of as a safety spot too, just to like have something of the earth where I can be and be in nature at the most I can be. And so I picked California. I grew up in California, and after I started this project of building an off-grid house, I realized I wanted to share the lifestyle. So that's why where you see more of my snowboarding career move more into this off-grid lifestyle. And the reason I wanted to do the off-grid was the lessons I was about to learn. Like, when you do something this way, you get more appreciative of the things that you need to survive in the world. It's simple water, a place to sleep, a place to stay warm. And why not better time to do it than just do this, and then I could walk out my front door in my snowshoes and go shoot a self-portrait with a camera now that was, this big. It weighed a couple ounces. I could be back. I could upload my stuff through my phone and still have a career and never leave home. And so that got me really excited to kind of share what I was up to. And that building's always been a passion for me. And so that was a part of my, I don't know, who I am that no one really knew about. And so that was exciting to wanting to share that more. And then the place kind of just took shape as I took those little ingredients to action, because I didn't ever think I'd live off a snowed dry place where I wouldn't be able to drive to. It's a lot of work to go take your groceries, or you forgot a bolt or a nut to something you got to get in your snowmobile or snowcat and drive in a snowstorm to go get something. It's been really fun. It's not easy, but I didn't think it was going to be easy. So it just took off. When I started, I became more and more passionate about the idea and built a chairlift, and this kind of thing started to keep taking shape.
Yeah, it's so sick. The house was talking about, you guys can see it on YouTube. It's an incredible structure, and I love the way that you thought about the design element, kind of using the Da Vinci method, but with your measurements. So the house is built kind of as your body is built, which I think is a super cool idea.
Thanks. These are the things that kind of came afterwards, after I thought a lot about what I wanted to build. You learn a lot of cool things when you just kind of sit down and, let it come in, when you start talking to people about off-grid lifestyle or trying to understand what you're passionate about. And that's kind of how my shape of the place, the whole Da Vinci Golden ratio, came about, by just looking at photos of me on the mountain and, arms up, and these ideas like that. That's the most kind of shape where I feel so enough excited about that I want to make an entire house out of it.
There's a question in the chat. Does he live there full time? Is that
Yeah, so it's come and gone on that. There's years I was there full time. I just, in the last two and a half years, I've had two boys come into my life, and so I have a 2.5-year-old and a 4-month-old now. And so the place of that being full time has kind of pulled back on the rings a little bit. My oldest is up there a lot with me, and my plan is to get back up there, but it's probably going to be another 3 years until I can get it comfortably and have my sons educated enough and able enough to walk in the snow.
Yeah, that's really cool though. That'll be a really interesting way for them to grow up and learn about the environment around them. They'll be a lot more connected, I feel like, than most kids that are on iPads all day.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. I'm kind of like moving as this all kind of comes into play, because I had a shop in a town of Colfax, and I was there part time, and that burned actually about a year last fall. And so I'm at my lady's house right now. So this is kind of where I'm kind of hunkering down.
Right on.
A
Yeah.
lot of projects to get back into the off grid.
Yeah, I heard about the shop. That was really tough to watch. I'd been following you for a long time, and I remember the day that they shared it online and seeing that whole thing go down for you. I was just watching in pain, and I could feel it's a tough thing because I lived in California for a while, so I've seen a lot of the fires just decimate houses, and it's one of those things where it happens so fast and so suddenly that it's so hard to believe.
Yeah, it is hard, and I thought there'd be some more stuff saved because they got the fire out pretty quick, but it didn't take long. I mean, everything just torched, and this was my the place where I kept everything, and so I next day, I was like, I forget where I was driving, but I was like, oh, went to the gas station, bought a T-shirt, and I was like, oh, I need a toothbrush. Like,
Yeah,
it was really interesting to just be flushed out. I'm realizing it's more like a forced cleanse of life. I'm pretty sad that what burned. I'm also grateful at the same time for some of my hard drives survived, of my footage of all the photos and stuff. So I was happy to keep some of the stuff that kind of was under certain blankets, and it was interesting to see what burned and what didn't too, because anything with leather or wool didn't burn, and so certain paperwork underneath the blanket made out of wool survived. It was anything out of polyester just was gone.
Yeah, it's interesting how those natural materials have the different reactions to flame. I end up sleeping next to a fire a lot, especially like this during the winter time. I'm sure you know. But if you're living in a natural shelter, fire can't get close enough to you. So I always wear wool because I know that if I get a little bit too close or if some of those sparks come off, they just go right out when they hit my jacket, versus if I was wearing like a polyester or some kind of man-made, I would just go up in flames.
Yeah. My clothing company, 2-for-1, we're actually making wool stuff that next year. So, life shapes things for the better most of the time. So this is kind of like the result of my experience.
So that came out of the fire experience, that idea.
It's like we need to bring this in. It's just I kind of knew that these things existed this way, but it just, when you have a strong enough experience, like, okay, I'm ready. Like, we need to do this. So yeah, we have certain warm fleeces and different stuff that it's called just fire retardant, but it's wool. It's like these certain things, and that's what Area 2-for-1 has been about. Also, is kind of like living in the snow and understanding how to make something better. And I'm owning a clothing company. I have the ability to make better clothes. There's a lot of other stuff I'd love to make for as far as a light switch or different things that are out of my reach. So clothes have been something I've changed a lot, where we make Gore-Tex denim jeans, because my lifestyle is from shoveling snowmobile to going to dinner, working on my snowcat. I need something that I don't want to change 5 times in a day. So this has been a goal for me, because the valuable in what I'm experiencing makes me realize I can't go buy certain things that I really want.
Yeah, that's true. Especially when you're living a life that's, atypical, because it's not as marketable for companies to make, right? So you got to kind of tailor to your own needs.
Yeah, I mean, the off-grid lifestyle is becoming more and more popular. So people are slowly going in production on high levels with certain things.
Well, if you got a wool line coming out this year, you got a customer in me. I love wool. I stand by it, and I tell everyone that comes to me for outdoor advice, in terms of clothing, it really doesn't get better in terms of being wet or in terms of fire. There's not really anything else that can do both that well.
True. Yeah.
It's amazing fabric.
Yeah.
So for Area 241, I got to know, where did the name come from?
Yeah. So when I first started making clothes, I went to a school where I learned how to sew and knit and make clothes, and it like baking bread and all this stuff. So when I first started sewing, I was making pants that were reversible, and so I wanted a brand name that was a universal language. So numbers kind of like came into my front line of category to pick with, and making like something that you use for two different things. I was like, well, 2 for 1. So that was kind of how the clothing name got the name 2 for 1. And that seemed like now we make jeans that have different usage. So we continue to do that idea. And Area 2 for 1 has just been more like this R&D, this research and development proper place to make better clothes. So I call it Area 2 for 1 because I want to bring these things that sometimes you have to do this to able to have it travel further for sharing. Is kind of like make something that has a name and then you market it or establish an idea around it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been something that I have been trying to accomplish so that people can relate something to Area 2 for 1 and not have it just a Mike Basich's house. It doesn't really like ring a certain way. So yeah. Area 2 for 1 has been the place of top secret research and development.
Yeah, it sounds like you got aliens up there.
Right.
It's a really cool name, but I didn't know like if it was a birthday or if it was like what the significance was of the numbers.
Right, yeah.
And so the other build out that I found a couple years back, I guess now, was the Fuso you made, the big truck. Is that something that you've still got? Are you still using that? And for, I guess, people that are unfamiliar with it, what was that build out like? What was the inspiration there?
Yeah, the Fuso's a rig that it's a Mitsubishi model called the Fuso, and it's a cab over vehicle, which means that the wheels are under the seat, not in front of the seat. And I picked that rig because it's much shorter by being a cab over. And I built a few tiny homes, and this was the one that I want to make something small enough to fit in a parking spot, but big enough in the back for a tiny house to be comfortable. So I took everything I learned, put it into this one style, and it moves. The one wall folds down, the other one slides out, and I made it to chase snow. I mean, in the last year, I haven't done a lot of it because of my kid, but I get to go. I'll go to Jackson or up to Whistler, but I've been to Alaska in the last 2 years with it. But again, it's just I like building, and I wanted something mobile for snow, but also on just going to the beach and stuff. This is a 4-wheel drive vehicle that you can go anywhere pretty much with it.
Yeah, it's super cool, and the amount of thought you put it into everything in the Fuso. When I saw that video, I realized that you had really kind of explored every option in terms of different ways to get power and store power, different ways to reduce weight in the back, things like that. I was really impressed with how much time you really spent on each small facet of that truck.
Oh, thanks. It's when I build something, I usually, like with this rig, I had it in my shop, and I just sat there and looked at it for about 4 or 5 days. and just kind of like, okay, what are the things that I'm going to do with this thing? You just imagine like you pull up to the grocery store and park in a parking spot. Like, where do you want to step outside, or how do you make the doors in the right spot and things move in certain situations? And that helped me fine tune a lot of details that I put a lot of time into. Being able to weld, I have the ability to kind of like spend more time than most people would want to hire somebody to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a nice ability to have, because certain unique things come out that way a lot, where you spend days making a hinge to do a certain thing. Certain things that just you're not going to go spend $4,000 on something that you might use a couple times. It's just, I mean, some people do, but
I think the welding for me, it seems like a big task. I'm curious, how did you figure that out? Did it start with a lot of failure?
Yeah, I mean, not this time around. I got pretty lucky. I would consider it luck. Not exactly like the way it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'll have bumps in the road where I'll take something down and redo it. The welding part, everything held together pretty well. Nothing's leaking. There's certain things that are pretty hard to do with hands, like making something not leak at 80 miles an hour, in a snowstorm or rainstorm. A factory can do pretty well at that kind of stuff, where the weather stripping touches really the right way because a robot did it. They had many practices at doing it.
Yeah.
And so that kind of stuff, you spend a lot of time hoping it will work. And most of the time it does. If you spend enough time making something, it will, I don't know, the level of education that you get balances out the failure, in my opinion. If you fail, you gain way more of what the failing part was. Because you can always take stuff apart and redo it most of the time. And like this, I had to cut the back of my truck out to have the access. So points like that, you're like, okay, this is a point of no return. Selling this car as a normal car. And when you cut open and you're inviting the rain in of your own, creation, you hope to get something right, because those are the moments you're like, okay, I better think this twice or measure it twice, as some say.
Yeah, you don't want to make the wrong cut when you're cutting out the back of your entire truck.
Yeah, and it's exciting, man. It's fun making something you're like, this is mine now. It's truly mine. No one else might not want it.
So, if I'm thinking about it right, you got this shop, and it allowed you to work on these projects, especially like the mobile mini homes. What's the plan now? Are you hoping to rebuild that shop into kind of like the former glory after the fire?
Yeah, I'm on the process of rebuilding it. I've always had a workshop my whole life, so having a place like this is part of my holy grail, you could say. I'm still gonna do welding and woodworking out of it. I think what I'm gonna possibly do when it is first finished is maybe do some tiny home videos and just kind of share a little bit more how to do these things, because I've had a lot of support for people investing in the rebuild, and so I want to figure out how I can give back to people, and I'm hoping to do this through the internet somehow to help to share people get where they want to go if they want to do something different. And I have a lot of education and knowledge I feel like could be helpful to other people. So
Yeah, I think you have a lot of practical experience, and I know I would definitely love to see how you would approach certain problems, because I think it's not like the technical building skills, it's how you navigate certain issues during the building process. Like, okay, this is the issue I ran into. How are we going to figure out the water tank if we can't put it here? We got to get creative. And like one of the instances is when you cut out the floor in your fuso and you put a bathtub in it. Like, that would never have crossed my mind, but it's just like a different way of thinking.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And these things are not everybody knows how to do it. I mean, I didn't, but like I spent a lot of time figuring out how to. I had to move part of the car parts to the side to make room for it. So it's modifying stuff that it becomes the feeling of being risky. And I don't know, if you don't invest too much where you're gonna, if something doesn't work out, you're not homeless. Like that's a good balance to have. Is like take the risk as you can afford it.
Yeah, I mean, at least now it's like you've got a really cool spot to go back to with your tiny home, so you've got a little bit of security now, right? It's like if you...
Yeah, and it's interesting as the world has been shifting. This becomes more of a need for me. Like I can go anywhere where if I need to be. From just the shift of how things are happening, or fires in California. I can move on the fly and get my family out of the smoke. Just stuff like this become much more valuable now.
Yeah, definitely. The changing landscape with the environment, I think, has definitely led more people to like explore the off-grid lifestyle. For me, it's more about like interacting with nature and like a naturalist perspective than kind of always worrying about natural disasters. But I think that definitely has pushed people towards living with nature now, as they understand that there could be a more sudden need for these skills.
Yeah. I mean, I think humans have always been like migrating species. So being somewhere for your whole life, it's a nice idea, but I think in some form we need to remember how to start a fire and cook over the fire. Just basic stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Are all of your tiny homes going to be kind of West Coast California, or have you ever thought about building stuff up in Alaska or East Coast? Or
I've always been interested in doing something in Alaska. I'm not sure when or how that's going to happen, but there's certain states and countries that have different laws that are attractive, in different ways. For if you're allowed to build an off-grid house, like these, that's why tiny homes are so popular in California on the West Coast. Is they're legal, but they're not. It's a gray area. Certain states are now allowing tiny homes to be legal, which is amazing. But for someone like California, the state is, I have a hard time thinking that that's going to happen, because it'll really change housing.
Yeah. So are they illegal because of the way they would impact the real estate market, or is there a concern about safety, or what is it?
No, it's more just so close to being a home feeling, and putting on a piece of land. You're actually only allowed to put a tiny house on a property with no house for only actually 2 weeks out of the year. You can come and go, but you can't homestead on a tiny home. Like realistically, you can't. But a tiny home on a trailer has a VIN number, so it falls in the DMV department. It's not about the home inspection part. It's so like it falls in a different category, and the only reason I think tiny homes are interesting is because it's not an RV. Like people have always put trailers on properties, but it's always been thought of like temporarily.
Right.
Tiny homes make someone think like, oh, this is it. This is the complete idea of the property. And when your neighbor has a $2 million house and you have a $50,000 tiny home, they're going to complain, because they think it's going to make their house go down in value. And so these rules start to fall into play where people turn people in if you're there more than 2 weeks, so it's all this gray area of what you're allowed to do. And again, certain states like Alaska, as long as you're 5 miles outside of the city, you're allowed to do whatever you want.
Yeah, Alaska seems like a frontier. Like it seems like there's no rules there. So
yeah, you need like a certified well, and I think that's about it.
So maybe that's what's next for Mike Basich and the crew now.
I think something that be up there, and I love Alaska. It's an amazing place to be.
Yeah, I haven't been up there yet, but I'm hoping 2022 is the year. I'd love to get up there and explore and ride and yeah, just check it all out. It's so vast.
Yeah.
Was that your favorite place probably in North America to snowboard, or is Canada kind of?
I like Alaska probably the most. It's a hard gamble to get the weather right. It's a place I like to visit, like, because the winter's pretty wild. It's cold, it's dark. It's like I think compresses like the spirit of a human a little bit. It's amazing no matter what. But I'm always there in the spring, and everyone's coming out of their house after 6 months hunkering down. It's like it's an amazing time to be there. Everyone's like dancing, just stoked to be outside. But yeah, I think I'd be up there at some point more, but probably not full time.
I can't imagine doing like the 20 hours of darkness like year in and year out. I don't think it would be for me.
Yeah, I don't know. But it's in the summer. It's amazing. It's like your hair grows faster. Like you can feel the sun, like really like giving you energy.
That's incredible. Yeah, the light. I think I could deal with a lot of sunlight. Just need some good curtains or something like that. But I think I could deal with a lot of sunlight.
Yeah.
The winter, not so much. That sounds pretty tough. But hopefully, I can get up there and get a little session in.
Yeah, and Alaska offers the off-grid feeling too, because like you're at your own risk. Like it offers a lot of that. And that's something I like. I like establishing myself responsibly in my own ways. Alaska's kind of already set up for that.
I'm sure. Are you usually going? Obviously, you guys have like probably full Abbey sets and shovels, beacons, all that stuff. But are you ever doing solo stuff out there? Or are you usually with a group of people?
I've not done solo stuff. I don't exactly like to preach it because it's not a good idea. But you get stuck in certain ways that's what your day's like. You definitely play it safe. But I started snowmobiling in Alaska in the late 90s. And so you kind of, when you approach something for the first time and realizing no one's coming to save you, you always kind of keep that as your experience, even though now you can have more people around. There's a tailgate and there's someone like I'm half a mile away will come and help you if something happens. So it's just, again, it's harder to find once you get more people in a certain situation, the whole experience changes. I'm really thankful for my property, Area 241, because that's kind of, I have a place and it's mine and I get to continue my experiences of what I want. And so I guess that's my place where I'll stick to most of my ideas,
Yeah, one of the coolest ideas about that place is the ski lift. And I'm curious, did you build that ski lift yourself?
It was a lift I bought in pieces from a friend.
Okay.
So it actually used to be a T-bar. And my first trip to Japan, I rode a single one-person chair. And ever since I rode that one chair, I've been inspired to realize a chairlift, all it really needs to do is get you to the top. Doesn't matter what it looks like. Doesn't matter how many people are on the chair. And so my chairlift is a piece of plywood that's 12 inches by 12 inches. And you just sit on that and it takes up to 375 pounds up the hill. On certain snow years, you touch the ground here and there. But I get so much snow, a tow rope doesn't really work there.
Yeah. Donner Pass, you got a lot of snow up there, and sometimes, like 6 feet in a weekend. It's crazy up there.
Yeah. So the chairlift was, I modified it quite a bit, but like the spinning wheel and all that stuff's all from, I think it's a Swedish brand.
Chairlift. For those that haven't seen it, he's got his own personal chairlift that takes him up and down on his personal property, which is it's kind of like a snowboarder's dream, honestly. Like when you're growing up, everyone's in a lift line, like, I just wish I had my own chairlift where I could never wait in a line and ski my own runs. You kind of made it happen, so it's definitely like super. It's super validating because now I know it's possible.
Right. Yeah. It's me too. Like, it's not huge, but it's something.
it's still the dream, man. You got a personal chairlift. Do you usually have friends out there to ride with you, or do you usually do it solo and just kind of keep it to yourself and just enjoy the nature?
Most of the time I'll keep it to myself. I have friends come up though, especially the ones that help build it. They, on the special days, I'll invite that crew. Having 3 people is a pretty good combo. So it's like three people at a time is pretty good, and you can ride POW all day and get pretty fresh tracks. It's a good solid day of riding POW.
Yeah, for sure. And you get to kind of feed off each other's energy when you have a couple other people there. That's a great way to incentivize people to help you build something. It's like, hey, if you help me build this, you'll get kind of an exclusive pass.
Right? Yeah.
That's awesome, man. You're living the dream. It's really inspiring. This has been super fun, Mike. I really appreciate it, and I'm super excited to see kind of what comes next for you. And I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat with me. And you, my friend, are definitely wild.
Right on, man. I'm happy to. Yeah, thanks again for setting this up, and I'm here to share. And if anyone has any questions, I hope I can answer them here and there through life. And again, I'm hoping to get things going where I can introduce more of how I do stuff on a regular basis. So,
right on, man. Well, everyone, keep an eye out for Mike's videos coming out. And best of luck, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks. Have a good day.